Welcome, everyone, to a special broadcast of the G.L. Henderson Show on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. Now, sitting in for GL tonight is our guest host, judge and author, Mr. Hubert L. Grimes.
Thank you, Z. We're so happy to have a chance to be with our listeners out there again here on this wonderful night coming from Daytona Beach, Florida. You know, I have to pause for a moment because we're recording this on the day after our general election, and it's also a very rainy day in Florida, to steal a song from old. In fact, many of us are experiencing some of the hurricane and the raft that it is causing right now, Hurricane Nicole. And so we're grateful that we're alive and well. We're grateful that we have overcome the previous hurricane from a month or so ago. And here we are tonight, and hopefully, by God's grace, we'll get through this night without much difficulty and find ourselves with the sun coming up, hopefully tomorrow, or at least by the end of the day tomorrow. So I just want to ask our listeners out there, if you think about us, say a prayer for us all down here in Florida. We are looking forward to the end of hurricane season coming up in a couple weeks, which is officially on November 30th, but you know how that goes. Sometimes nature doesn't always listen to our hard and fast deadlines that we impose. So I'm happy tonight to have a chance to bring to you a very special woman tonight who is doing an exceptional amount of good work in the field of education here in Florida. And it's none other than Mrs. LaShakia Moore. Mrs. LaShakia Moore is going to be talking with us tonight. To say that she is an educational expert definitely is an understatement. We're going to talk a little bit about her background here, and I just want to welcome her. And if I may, I'd like to call you by, of course, we often refer to you by your sort of nickname as Shaka. And if you don't mind, I'd like to be able to call you that tonight. Is that okay with you?
That's absolutely okay with me, and I'm so excited to be here and to be able to share with you tonight.
All right, fantastic. And I hope that you and your family are staying well, staying dry up there in Flagler County. I know we're here on the east coast of Florida, both in the area of Flagler, Palm Coast, and the area of Daytona Beach. And so we all are sort of getting the brunt of this storm right now. So as we're recording this tonight, there's a lot of howling wind outside, so we're grateful that we can all be in a quiet space and place for the recording of our show. Let's talk a lot about you and your life story. And I know our listeners will certainly be impressed with not only your life story, but the work that you're doing to help our young people here in the state of Florida. You're a native Floridian by birth. Talk about your growing up.
Floridian.
Okay, all right. As am I, and of course that means that this isn't the first hurricane that we've all experienced. Unfortunately, we've seen a few, but not to get so caught up in a hurricane. But just talk a little bit about how your evolution and your life story. You're born down in I believe it was Indian River County.
I am a native Floridian. I was born in St. Lucie County in Fort Pierce, Florida, where I graduated high school at Fort Pierce Central High School. And then I left Fort Pierce Central High School and traveled just a few miles up the road to Daytona Beach. And I received my undergraduate degree in students with disabilities, exceptional education from the great Bethune-Cookman University.
Okay. And then what was it that pointed you in the direction of working in the field of education?
Growing up, I've always loved the idea of education. I was a tutor in high school, as well as just really loved and admired the work of my teachers. But I heard many educators at that time, and some that may still say this today, do not go into education And so in high school, I was convinced that I was going to go into the medical field. I took advantage of medical opportunities within my high school, but it was really my brother, Trey, is his name, that really drew me to knowing that I wanted to go into education. It was my senior year in high school, and I remember overhearing or listening in on a conference that my parents were having about my brother Trey and some of the struggles he was having in school. Trey was excellent with his hands, but he was not really into the books per se. But he could build and anything, and he could make things that did not any longer work, make them work either as their original design or something else. But Trey, later in life, after I went to school and received my degree in education, I realized that Trey has what is called dyslexia. And it really was watching him struggle academically, but be so bright and have so much to offer the world is what made me want to go into education in order to find that light within our students and give them hope and direction without some of the turmoil that my brother experienced while he was in the K-12 system. So that's really what really solidified to me that education was a place that I wanted to go and that I wanted to work with students with disabilities and take the barriers and take obstacles and find opportunities in those obstacles and help those students learn, grow, and become productive members of our society.
Wow. So you actually took what some people might have said was, what as you said at the outset, sort of a dead-end type of job, and you in turn have turned around and have said you've taken it and turned it into something very special, touching the lives of other people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have loved every moment of it, and I am so thankful that I followed my heart and went into the field of education.
And, you didn't just stop at the bachelor's level. You continued on to get advanced degrees. And what is the idea behind that? Are you continuing in that, in dealing with young people with certain kind of what we might call restrictive abilities, or some might call it disabilities? Are you still doing that now, or have you found yourself emerging into some other aspect of education?
So as an educator, I really have had an opportunity to work with all types of students. But I will tell anyone that my first love is definitely students with disabilities, and really helping be an advocate for not only them, but for their families, to help them really overcome many barriers. And so my bachelor's degree is in students with disabilities. I later went on to get a master's degree in educational leadership. I also received many endorsements and additional certification in reading, in teaching students that have autism, that are have autism or on the autism spectrum disorder. I also am reading endorsed, ESOL endorsed. So lots of different certifications and endorsements that I added to my certification throughout the years. And I am currently enrolled at St. Leo University, where I'm pursuing my doctorate degree currently.
And what will be your specialty in that area?
My doctorate will be also with students with disabilities. It really is. I'm very interested in language barriers, so how assistive technology can help improve the language acquisition as well as the expressive language of our students who have some sort of language disability. And so what we find often is just because a student cannot physically speak or physically communicate so that you can hear their voice does not mean that they don't have something to say. And so how do we use assistive technology and other aspects of the technological world in order to give them a voice?
Fantastic. Well, there's no doubt that you have put a lot of time, energy, and effort into this field. And was there ever someone in high school that may have told you that, LaShakia, you can't do that, or LaShakia, that's a dead end, becoming a teacher, or would you like to go back and tell someone today that they were wrong in what they perceived you to be limited as?
Many people told me that the field of education, that the pay wasn't well, don't do it, go and do something that will allow for you to be able to have additional financial resources. But again, I'm so happy that I did not listen to that, because though I would agree that the field of education, there is a need for an increase in salary and pay for those individuals who are like me in that role. However, I do also believe that with the right management, you're able to live the life that you want to live. And so I am thankful that I have not only been able to follow my heart and really what I do believe that I'm called to do, but I've also been able to do that and still be able to live the life that I want to live and live a life that I'm pleased with financially.
Many of our listeners there may not necessarily be specifically involved or in the field of education, but you just hit a point there that really resonates with me, and I hope with our listeners. When we start talking about following your passion, following your purpose, and the things that we do sometimes that can sometimes steer us off of that path because of what society says will be a quote-unquote good fit for us, or they think that you ought to pursue chasing after money as opposed to pursuing your dream or pursuing the thing that sort of gets you revved up every day. And how speak to that part of our audience who may be struggling with the idea of how do you decide which road to take in life? Do you take the road that everybody else says that you should follow, or do you take the road less traveled?
I believe you should take the road that is going to allow you to wake up each and every day excited about what you get to do. And I always say this to individuals who I get an opportunity to work with, is that I get to do this every day. And every day, I cannot recall any day in my career over the last almost 20 years, I cannot recall a day that I woke up and did not want to go in and do the work that I get to do each and every day. And so I say to our listeners here to go after that thing that you've been created to do. Go after that thing that will allow you to wake up every day and have a change and help cultivate a change within our world. But go after that thing that just makes your heart beat. And for me, that really is education. I cannot imagine not being an educator. I have had an opportunity to be and serve in many different roles, and I know we'll talk a little bit about some of those roles, but I'm my best self when I am with students, when I am in a position to help grow and just empower our students. And so I say to our listeners, go after that thing that allows you to wake up every day excited to do the work that you get to do.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of those roles that you have experienced over your 20-plus years of in the field of education. I'm assuming you, like many who start off in education, you started off as a student teacher. And where did that take you? What pathway did that take you? Did you go into the classroom, and what was that experience like?
So I started off as a student teacher doing my internship there. I finished that up in December, and I was so blessed that in January, I was able to take over the very class that I had done my student teaching in. At the end of that year, I was offered a position. I served as a teacher within LaShakia County for a number of years, and then I transitioned to Flagler County, where I was able to serve as a teacher. I've served as an academic coach. I've served as a curriculum specialist, a principal, a director over teaching and learning, and I'm currently serving as the assistant superintendent for academic services right now for Flagler County.
Wow. For one so young, you've got such a litany of accomplishments in that window of time. And what is it? Which one of those particular ones? And I know you said you truly enjoyed the hands-on of working with students, but compare that role as a, let's say, hands-on classroom teacher with the various roles that you have just outlined and your career progression.
So by far, outside of being a classroom teacher, my favorite job of all times has definitely been to be the principal of a school. I believe that the next most important person in a school, outside of the teacher that you have in front of our students, is the principal, because that principal is the person who sets the tone for the school environment. They are the ones that ensure that the environment of the school is a safe place for students to learn. And so it is so important that we have quality educators who are in front of our students, but those educators need a high-quality principal who is there to support them and provide an environment where our teachers can go in and do what they've been called to do, and that is teach. Our teachers cannot meet their goal. They cannot do what we task them with if they do not have a leader within their school that is going to help create an environment for them to go in and do just that. And so I loved being a principal. I loved being able to meet and know over 1,200 students that I was responsible for each year. I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed that role. And so now as I serve as the assistant superintendent, I look at it the same way. Our principals need an assistant superintendent and a superintendent that is going to create an environment for them to be able to create an environment for their teachers. It is my responsibility as an assistant superintendent to ensure that they are equipped and empowered to do what they need to do for our students, to be able to create safe places for our students to learn and grow. And so I look at the role that I'm currently in right now. I look at that in the same light as I looked at being a principal and my responsibility to my teachers. I now look at that as my responsibility to ensure that our staff that they have a safe environment for them to work in so that they can create great experiences for our students.
Wow. And what you, as you said that, I was just sort of thinking along the line that, and literally as a principal, you were the point person for dealing with the teachers on the one hand, but also interfacing with, I'm sure, many parents and parental issues on the other, as you sort of brought those two ends of the spectrum together. And it seems like now that in your role as an assistant superintendent, you're not only dealing with the parents, but you're dealing with some of the policymakers as well. And those seem to be challenges I can imagine that certainly keep you going every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are many stakeholders that I have an opportunity to work with each and every day. I have an opportunity. So when I think about just today, and though today was a little bit different because we were preparing for a storm, but we still had students in, we had class in session. So today I had an opportunity to meet with many different stakeholders. I had an opportunity to meet with parents. I had an opportunity to meet with our faculty and staff and interact with our faculty and staff. I had an opportunity to interact with board members who help to really enforce the policies and procedures that are set forth by our state. And so every day, I really do have an opportunity to meet with many different stakeholders. And though they may serve different roles, I truly do believe that our stakeholders are going after what is best for our students. Just sometimes what we think is best differs. And so my role is really to get to the common ground. And the common ground is that we want what's best for our students. And so how is that going to look? While taking in what all of our stakeholders are bringing to the table and using that information in order to create procedures that work best for our students here in Flagler County.
That you have really, this is perfect timing because we think about the fact that we just had finished an election on yesterday. There'll be many changes taking place in amongst our elected officials, particularly at the both state and local level. I don't know how your school board sorted out, but we know that our governor here in Florida got reelected, and he has made it a big part of his mission to what they said to empower parents in the field of education and trying to encourage more parents to get involved. And sometimes, not necessarily in what we might call the easiest of ways, but trying to make the pendulum swing back and give parents more. And I will say this, I know you might not be able to specifically address it, or specifically say it, but it seems like that in our legislature here in Florida, they have, over the last 2 or 3 years, they have worked towards taking that pendulum and seeking to give parents more control over their kids' education. And yet you are one of those, as you described, you're sort of the interpreter, because you don't make the policy, the legislation or the policy at the school board level, but you've got to take and implement that policy so that it benefits your students. How challenging is that?
One of the things right now, if you're here in the state of Florida or you read anything about the state of Florida education right now, is you hear the year of the parent. And what I want to say is that there's always been that the need for family engagement. There's always been that need for parents to be involved. And I think what is happening now is that we're seeing it called out more specifically of what that involvement looks like. And so for me, as you stated very clearly, for me, it is important that we get our direction from the state, be it we agree, disagree, support or don't support, take that information and follow through with it with board policies as well as procedures that we will implement within our schools that bring forth what legislation has put into play. But there's always been a need for parent involvement. And so right now, what my goal is as an educator is for me to remind our families of that, is that we as educators, we need our families. We need our community to be involved, and we've always asked for that. We just don't want it to appear like it's us against them. Our students need our families connected, and they need our communities connected to the work that we're doing, but we have to be able to work collaboratively in order for it to be effective work.
Speaking of that, you actually it kind of got dumped on you as terms of the responsibility of something that was a real hot button issue that came out of our governor's plan and out of the legislature's plan in support of that. When they made some changes in the last couple of years as far as what Florida became one of the few states in the country where they began to, and I'll use the phrase, ban certain books from the classroom. And they created some type of requirements that if a parent didn't think the child should be reading certain books in particular, that they should be, quote unquote, not required to do so, or even held in the library. But as I understand, you got tasked with how do you take that that legislation, that policy, and now how do you implement that in a practical fashion so that it doesn't disrupt the school operation? Talk about that for us and help our listeners to be able to understand how you took this hot button topic and was able to make it work.
Over the last 2 years, I've had the opportunity to be the supervisor over media services. And so I supervise our media specialists and work collaboratively with them. And so, a matter of fact, it was about a year ago this time. It was in November of last year that you started to hear this uproar of concerns around the materials that are work in our media centers. And when I say our media centers, in school media centers. And so there was this great concern around the materials. But it was full on that there, the desire to just take certain materials out. But what we heard and what I heard strongly, you had people who were for certain materials, you had people who were against certain materials, you had people who felt like students should be able to read anything, you had people who felt like they should only be able to read certain topics. And so you heard our community in an uproar for and against. You heard parents in an uproar for and against. And you heard our educators in an uproar for and against. But what we heard clearly is choice, is that people wanted choice. They wanted to be able to choose. Now, some people wanted to choose for everybody. And then there were some people who felt like, no, you don't get to choose for me. And so as we worked together with our media specialists, that is what we heard very clearly. And so we developed a process that did just that allowed for people to choose. However, it empowered families to choose for their own child. And though there is still an opportunity for you as a community member to bring reconsideration of a material, we now have a better balance to that. You can bring a material up and you can say, I don't believe that any student should be reading this material. We'll take it through a process. We will bring in a committee, and that committee will decide. And sometimes the decision is, no, the book should remain, but the book isn't for every student. So then that's when we created that next level, which we gave 3 levels to our families. One level was really just open access to our media centers at different levels, of course, within reason. So our elementary students will have free access to our elementary libraries, and that would be the same for middle and high school. And then we had another level, level 2, where a family could come in and say, I don't want my child reading these books. But we empowered our families to say, tell us which books those are. We can't allow you to just tell us a topic, because it's impossible for us to know the full content that is in every material. But you as a parent can say, I don't want LaShakia reading these books. And we put in a system that allowed for us to do that for our families. And then we put in the last system, which was the most restrictive, and it's for those families that say that I want to review or pre-approve everything that my child reads. And as a parent, that's your right to do that. And so we put in a system for that gave our families choice. It still gave our community a voice, but it really allowed for parents and families to choose for their child, and not for me, LaShakia, to choose for every child within my community and be the voice for them. Because what you want for your child may be different than what I want for my child, but I should honor both of our voices. And so that's what we did for our families.
How has your way of resolving this issue been received?
It was, there was originally some pushback for those individuals who felt like, no, I want to have a voice for them all. I want to say this, and this is it for all students. But our families have really appreciated, our community has embraced it, and I will tell you that we have had an opportunity to share this process that we created with many counties across the state of Florida, but we've also been able to share it with many school districts around the country. And so I'm always shocked and surprised when a school district from another state reaches out to me and says, hey, LaShakia, will you mind talking with us about what you're doing with media services, and could you share a little bit about the process that you developed in Flagler County?
Wow. So what are some of those places that you have had to assist in addressing this same type of legislation? What are some of those other communities or states?
And, you know, those we've had North Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, California. So lots of different states that have reached out to us. We've been quoted in the New York Times and many different major media outlets. But I think what people are most shocked about is they expect this really juicy story. But really, at the heart of it was that we heard choice. We heard that our families wanted choice. And what we wanted as educators is to ensure that our students had quality materials in their hands. And so we didn't want to we're not going to get in the middle of the back and forth fighting over this is appropriate, this is not appropriate, you're this or you're that. We're not going to do that. We're going to focus on what our goal is. And our goal is to ensure that there is quality materials in the hands of our students that represent a variety of topics and a variety of views.
Wow. You know, that's interesting because, yes, it's been a very volatile discussion that went on. It went on at the legislature, went on in the media, and yes, many school boards, we saw fights emerge, sometimes almost to the verge of physical fights, because as you stated that there were those who believed that they should dictate what our kids should be learning without regard for the fact of parental input, and yet there were parents who felt like they could tell other parents, you know, what their kids ought to be listening to or what they ought to be learning. And would you say that there were some particular books that seemed to be consistently brought out title-wise, that any that come to mind that seem to be the ones that were the heated discussions took place over certain particular books?
Many of the
titles
books that have been brought up have been books that are on the common list of, if you were to Google right now, books that have been challenged. And you're going to get maybe 100 books, and those books are common. And they've been challenged for some for years and some in very many places. And so we were not necessarily surprised by the titles because some of the titles were titles that we were familiar with just from watching what was happening across our country. But really the topics were common. The topics ranged in sexual content, different relationships that were not heterosexual relationships. Also, some topics were topics of race, and many of the topics were related to race. And so the titles are really those common titles, but the issues that were brought up around the materials are really were related to those major three that I listed are really the major topics that are commonly on that list. And so that is sexual content or relationships, different types of relationships that are not your traditional heterosexual relationships, and things related to race.
Did you find by chance any particular age group which seemed to have more, you got more pushback as to books that these individuals wanted to have removed from the reading list? Was there any particular category? I know you deal with all three, elementary, middle, and high school, but was there any particular one that seemed to draw more attention, any particular category or age group that drew more attention than any others?
Definitely high school. High school materials are the ones that are under more review within our county, as well as across our state and across the country. I think that there is a false narrative around what we teach in school, and so that did spark some dialogue, some opportunities for dialogue with our families and with our communities of what is actually taught in school and what is not taught in school, as well as it was really high school that most of our challenges or reconsiderations occur in. It would definitely be high school.
That's interesting. I actually was thinking it would probably have been more in the middle school area, since there are many who feel like that's that time when the kids are beginning to blossom and move out to their having established their own personality, and maybe there are those who want to try to stop them from growing up too fast, so to speak. But you said it's high school level.
We definitely have reconsiderations that happen in the middle school level, but generally the topic, the materials are in our high school media centers. Also, when I say that there's this false narrative of what is actually taught in school, I think there's this misunderstanding of what a library represents. So a library is really around free choice. It's around self-selected materials. These are not materials that are being used to direct instruction. So we're not using these to do any type of teaching from, but students are reading these books that they have chosen themselves. And so it is important, and when you look at any selection development criteria for school libraries as well as public libraries, is for us to have a varying topics, varying views represented in our media center, for it to be a very well-rounded media collection. And so oftentimes some of the topics that are there, the viewpoints that are represented, is what people go after because they don't value, or they feel like that view is inaccurate, and that we're using that view in order to teach something. And 99% of the time, the material that are in our media centers are not being used to teach anything, but it is really free selection of students to read. And that is where there was an opportunity for learning and growing for our parents and our communities of what a media center represents.
That's interesting. And particularly in light of the fact that, most communities have public libraries, that many of these same books would probably be available there. So if a kid really wanted to, quote unquote, read this book without parental consent, there's certainly a ways, and of course in the day of Dr. Google, these kids can find these, if there are these categories of information that they want to learn about that the parents don't want to, particularly at the high school level. That's what I find to be rather interesting, that is the level that most of the parental objections seem to come from, when in effect those are the ones, those kids have learned far enough how to master the internet. They've learned how to do whatever it is that they choose to do, and when it comes down to, learning and growing. I find that to be rather interesting.
It is. And when you think about our high school students, and when I just think about the high schools within my county, our students are exposed to so many different great opportunities. Our students are graduating, and they finished the fire academy. They're graduating as EMTs, just waiting to turn 18 and take the test. We have in our schools police academies. We have aeronautics where students are leaving as pilots. We have construction, automotive, heavy equipment. I mean, so many different opportunities that are there for our students, because they're literally about to become the citizens of our community. And so it's important that we teach them how to respect and gain understanding of different views. And so there's going to be there's going to always be materials in our media centers that one may not completely agree with or appreciate the view of that material. However, it is important that our students have access to well-rounded materials that show a variety of views.
You know, I find that to be such a powerful statement, because there are some who believe that, you know, when we start banning books, that we're going down a direction that's really taking us to a dead end or even to a deep hole. There certainly are other and as much historical data on those countries that have engaged in book banning and where that's led to. So the fact that you have been able to take what you might want to say, take a lemon and turn it into lemonade and show that there's a process, and at the same time not just go along with say, okay, we just want to take all these books out and take them out and burn them, but instead you have come up with what apparently is a relatively easy, simple, I won't say easy because it wasn't easy, I'm sure, to develop it, but you got people to the point where they could understand that there has to be a systematic process for reviewing materials. And I believe does not the state of Florida's Department of Education also play a hand in, quote unquote, identifying some of these so-called books that they don't think are apropos?
So there is some guidance through our curricular resources that we adopt for ELA or social studies or science that come along, that also include readers and specific resources and topics that our students should be reading and learning about. But here in the state of Florida, the Florida Department of Education currently is working on a training that will be provided to all media specialists and anyone who's responsible for selecting materials or being a part of the selection committee for materials that they must complete prior to being able to do that. So we eagerly await what that training and direction will look like.
That's good. That's good. Well, you know, I certainly trust that, you know, in the midst of all the political turmoil that's gone on in Florida and in other parts of the country, you know, evidenced by the fact that you've got people calling you and say, hey, how do we solve this problem? How did you guys get a handle on it? And, you know, what could have been a riotous situation, and I'm sure that you all have had some heated board meetings dealing with this particular issue, but you came up with a way, at least a strategy and a system that at least allows for there to be some measure of sanity to be utilized, because this is something that, taken to the far extreme, certainly would not have been a good thing for I believe for our young people, because it seems to me that, you know, reading is your window to the world, and to be able to, even though there may be different opinions in terms of various kinds of information, at least the fact that if a student can read and is encouraged to read, then we know that that's going to open that student up to being able to be a contributor to the society down the road. I mean, we know we can't always control everything they do any more than any other aspects of their kids growing up, but we certainly try to influence them in a positive direction. But it's just kind of, I still shake my head at the fact that there are people who say, we don't want you to read this, or we don't want you to read that. But in reality, that we usually, when you tell a kid don't do something, that just becomes a license for them to pursue doing it. Do you find any truth to that statement?
Well, there definitely has been some truth to that over the last year. But our focus and the thing that I shared with our media specialists over and over again is that for us, our goal is to ensure that our students have access to quality materials. We're not going to get into the back and forth. We're going to build systems and procedures that keep books in the hands of our students. Now, we take seriously our responsibility to review materials and make informed decisions as to their appropriateness at different levels. But our goal is to ensure that our students have access to quality materials that represent a variety of topics and a variety of views. And that's what our focus is. And so there were many days that we experienced some frustration of hearing the fighting that was happening within our county and within our state. Mm-hmm. But we could not get pulled into that. We had to really listen in and lean in to hear what is it that the common message is for both sides. And the common message for both sides is choice. I want to choose for my child. You want to choose for your child. And so how do we put something into place that allows you to do that? And for our families and our community members that still feel strongly that this material should not be in the hands of any children, we have a process for that as well.
All right, very good, very good. But now, in addition to your work, you're also a mom and a wife, and you're very active in your local community in a number of different areas. So when do you find time to do all of those other kinds of ventures and activities, and talk a little bit about what some of those involve?
I think it's all about having a balance. It's important to me that my children get to see firsthand me serving our community, serving them. They see that with me in the house. And I have this quote that's in my house that says, I want to be famous in my home. I want my children to speak well of me. I want my husband to speak well of me. Not just my children, but my nieces, my nephews, every family member, everyone connected to me. I want them to speak well of me. And so how do I do that? That's me showing up every day as my full self and ensuring that I'm giving the best of me in every situation. So my family gets an opportunity to see that, but they also get an opportunity to see me serving in my role as educator, and they get to see how I handle difficult times and difficult situations because my children, my nieces, my nephews, my cousins, they're watching that, and they're learning from the way that I respond to pressure. They're watching and the way that I respond to praise as well. And people, it's not from a place of humility. But one of my favorite books is a book called The Four Agreements. And I read this book several times a year. But one of the agreements is to not take it personally. So when people praise me, when people are upset with a decision that I make, I don't take it personally. And I do that because my goal every day when I get up as an educator, when I get up as a mom, when I get up as a wife, my goal is to make the best decisions with the information that I have. And so I don't take any of it personally, because if I'm on this high horse when you are celebrating me, that same level of emotion is what I'm going to experience when you are criticizing me. Because my goal really isn't for you to cheer for me. My goal isn't for you, definitely not even to criticize me. But my goal every day is to show up as my best self and to do the best that I can do with what I have as a mother, as a wife, as an educator, as a friend, as a daughter, as a sister. That's what I'm going to do each and every day. And so it gives me such great honor for me to be able to live this life in front of my children so that they can learn and grow, and we can have great dialogue in our home about it. But my home is also a safe place. My home is a place that I can come and I don't have to be any of those things. I can just be mom and I can be wife. And I'm so thankful to be able to come home and be wife and be in a place of safety and not have to be the one that, making all of the decisions. And I can just be vulnerable there in my home with my husband and in my home with my children. And so I am honored when people ask me about my biography. I often want to write that I am a daughter, I'm sister, I am a mother, I am a wife, I am a friend, I'm an educator, I'm a community member. The rest of the stuff, is just additions. It's just some sparkle that you can put on all of those titles, but I just try to show up every day as my best self and give my family, give my community, give family, give whomever I'm interacting with, give them the best that I can give them because they deserve that.
One of the things that you've hit on so much in your answer there, and I was thinking about some of the work that you talk about you're doing beyond the classroom and things that you're doing in the community, because even now in this season, you were telling me before we started the show tonight that because we're in this hurricane intense moment, you have had experience where you've had to help set up hurricane shelters in the community for those who had to leave their homes during time of storms. And of course, even tonight, I believe you said earlier that you were at the shelter just to make sure everything was set up properly. And I will say that for me, it seemed like this storm just kind of came out of nowhere. We didn't have a lot of the lead time that we had with some of the previous ones. So what's that experience been like, which is, again, outside of the classroom, but you're serving the community?
It really is an honor to serve our community in that way. And, when you think about shelter, you often hear the term shelter of last resort, right? When you think about going to a shelter, it's not the first thing on your list. The first thing on your list is to stay home. It may be to go and be with family. It may be to evacuate the area. But sheltering is usually the last resort. But tonight, as we set up our shelters and we opened them up, and I'll return there to the shelters tomorrow, there were so many familiar faces that I know from other shelters, other opportunities for us to open the shelters. And so those individuals are coming there, and sometimes they're our most fragile members of our community. They are our elderly. They are our community that has special needs. Most of them are definitely our elderly community. And so it's such an honor to serve them and to take them in and get them settled in our community. And I joke around with them when I'm bringing them in. I always say, at the end of this, I'm going to ask you to complete a survey. I hope that you would give me 5 stars. And we laugh about it because we know that there's not really a survey there. But the service that we provide as an organization really is 5 stars. And we joke about that this is a 5-star shelter. And so people are always amazed at why people turn out and come to our shelters of last resort. It's because they know that they're going to come into a place that they're going to be treated with dignity and respect, and that we're going to love on them and care for them, and we're going to give them a safe place to be while we hunker down for the storm. And so it's always a pleasure for me to serve our communities by working our shelters. And people don't realize that our schools often, in most communities, our schools are the shelters. They are the place. Yeah. And so we flip them from being places of learning for our students into places that people can go to seek refuge. And so they come in and we're smiling and we're greeting them, and we want to know who they are, and we want them to be safe, and we want them to feel comfortable in the place that they are. So I can tell you right about now, at our shelter, they are getting ready. The lights are almost about to go out for the night, but I can assure you that they have a nice hot pot of coffee going right now, and they likely have some type of sweet treat that our amazing food service staff have left from them. And tomorrow morning they will get and receive a nice hot breakfast, and it is an honor to serve our community in that way.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And to think, man, people don't realize that being that school teacher, as quote unquote, we started out talking about, it covers a broad range of things, and you have certainly shown that education is something that's so critical. You know, I know we're rapidly running out of time. I've truly enjoyed listening to you and interfacing with you tonight in terms of learning more about this whole process and all the different things that you're involved in. But let me ask you a couple other kind of final questions. What do you see? I know we've always got challenges going on, particularly in the field of education. And so what do you see as the great challenges of this current generation? And maybe secondly, how can we as parents or individuals impact the educational growth of that generation? Those two sort of run hand in hand. If you could kind of give us some guidance on that. What are some of the great challenges that you see, and how can we on the outside as parents, friends, community people help bring about the implementation of those things?
I think one of the greatest challenges that we face is lack of perseverance, and people are so quick to give up, and we don't often want to take the time to listen and to understand others' views. And so we see that. We see the lack of perseverance. So then, as a result, there is that inconsistency and lack of structure. And so we don't have those strong structures in place. We see it quickly happening in education, where we're having this rapid overturning of educators leaving the field of education. And when I say educators, I mean anyone within the education system, that they're not staying. They're not sticking it out and sticking with it. And so we're struggling in that. But what I would say that we as educators need from our families is really to stand up and be stakeholders, be true stakeholders. If you are a parent or if you are a community member, if you live within a community, you have a responsibility to our schools. Because if you show me a failing school district and school system, I'm going to show you a failing community. And so if you show me a thriving school thriving school district, I'm going to show you a thriving community. So our community, our parents, and even not our parents, our families, if you live within a community, you have a responsibility to our school system. And so we ask that you show up. We ask that you show up. We ask that you be true stakeholders and be involved and get to know the system as a whole. Don't come in one way with one topic that I'm only interested in this one thing, but come in and bring your expertise to the table, ensuring that our schools are safe places for our students to learn and to grow. And we need our community members to be a part of that. And we need our community members and our parents to be a part of that, because we need you to teach this generation everything that you know, because there is that lack of perseverance that is there. There is that lack of structure that is there. And so we need for our older generation to really help teach us, myself included, teach us what you know, teach us how to serve our community, teach us how to be diligent. And I think that is what has been proven to have happen with other generations is that perseverance. And we need to see that and know that. And so my request to anybody who lives in a community, which is everybody lives in a community, get involved in your neighborhood schools. If you are not involved within your school and you don't know what's happening within your school, you are missing out on a vital opportunity to serve your community and ensure that your community is the place that you want to live. Wow,
that's so great, so great. And, you know, when you think about it, I mean, there are many opportunities for people to participate think about the career days that we have at schools to the parent-teachers associations and all the host of other kind of interactions. And if you don't know what to do, then reach out to your school, reach out to the local principal and ask them whether they need some help. They might need, I think I've heard of people that are I won't say granny nannies, but people who actually contribute, come and read. I was involved in a program years ago with Rotary Readers where we actually read to elementary kids. Generally once a month or once a week. And so as you've just stated, contact your local school and you'll see that there's opportunities for you to participate. And any final comments for you as we get ready to wrap up for tonight?
My final comments really is thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share the love that I have for education. It is such an honor, and I say this in really from the depths of my heart. It is such an honor to serve our students and serve our community by being an educator. And more importantly, beyond that, I am thankful to have a family, both immediate and extended, that supports me and that helps me to be my best self. And I'm thankful for every person that is connected to me in that way that allows for me to show up as my best self. And my last and final comment will always be get involved in your school. It's the way that you improve your community. Wow.
Well, there you have it, folks. Mrs. LaShakia Moore, who's been with us tonight. I always refer to her as an educational expert. She hails out of the Palm Coast area of Central Florida. And certainly, again, thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule, even working at night, folks, as she was rushing here for our interview tonight from the shelter, making sure that other people's lives were being fulfilled and that they were safe and sound in the midst of this hurricane storm that we're experiencing here on Florida's East Central Coast. So with that being said, you all know my motto: education is the key to being and staying free. And as I was told a long time ago, never go to bed as ignorant as you were when you got up this morning. Every day, you ought to learn something new. This is Hubert Grimes sitting in for the G.L. Henderson Show. Thank you very much, and we'll say a fond adieu.